Hi everyone, really happy to be on stage to discuss today around like this idea of from scroll to sales. So let's start maybe with a fairy tale. So once upon a time, a brand was able to having a seamless and omni-channel strategy to enhance the client experiences and driving sales effectiveness and ROI. The question is, of course, is it really a fairy tale or can we consider this as a real story? If we step back and have a look on the macro environment, we know that there is three main points. One, from the customer experiences, we know that first, the household budget are decreasing and they are more, challenging themselves around which bucket they want, to address the huge portion of their budget. Secondly, we know since the pandemic that the digital experiences and the digital adoption are more and more used, and so they are using multi-device, multi-channel to really, interact with the brands. From a market point of view, which is the point two, we know that on a year-on-year, there is an increase in terms of media budget coming from the company to reach the customers, and we know that the regulation are, challenging the market to find new way to reach the customer. With the HFSS, with the GDPR, we know that that's currently a challenge. And number three, from a brand's point of view, we know that first, there is a huge fragmentation of the market, so to be able to reach the right customer at the right time with the right message, it's become more and more challenging. But at the same time, with the recession, we know that now CFO are the new CMOs, and they are challenging any marketers to showcasing that when I'm spending £1, what are the return on that spend that I have? And so that's why we can consider that a fairy tale can be true, but there is still challenge.
And as Pierre mentioned, we've seen a change in how people shop, mainly about where people shop. From high street to e-commerce to mobile. I think today, the question is no longer where people shop, but what and how they shop. The marketing funnel goes from awareness, consideration, and purchase. But that funnel is no longer linear. It's a lot more immersive today. And TikTok has disrupted that space. If I think about all the heatless curlers I have tried from home, or the Dubai chocolate I would have never discovered if it wasn't for TikTok, the shopping experience is no longer a solo experience. We just buy in community. And so that's why it's really important to have a link from exposure to real business outcomes to make sure you can measure your success. And so I think this is why we're talking today, and this is why we are in front of you talking about this fairy tale, because the partnership with LiveRamp is allowing advertisers to measure real business outcomes.
When we are speaking of partnership and fragmentation, we know that there is new adoption in the market, and one of them at the funnel is currently reinvented. You have this idea of collaborating directly between agency, brands, data providers, because when I'm a brand, I can have direct access to my signals. I can have directly access to my transactional data, and I can measure sales effectiveness. But what's happening if you're a brand which are more a B2B2C, like I'm a CPGs, I don't have access to my in-store sales. How can I really showcase the value of my spend? And it's where the data collaboration piece is key, because we enable different actors from the market to really collaborate with each others to having a better, at the end, effectiveness in terms of measurement, but even in terms of targeting.
And going back to where we were talking about CFOs, CMOs, today all they really care about is measuring the return on their marketing spend. So I think data collaboration, partnering with partners like LiveRamp is allowing that link between ad exposure to real business outcome. And that's what they care about at the end of the day. They want to know if where they're investing, are they getting this return? What is the value of their marketing spend? And in that context, this is why we've been partnering with LiveRamp for many years now. It's about proving that value. It's about proving that return on ad spend.
And before jumping in the case study with Coca-Cola, here we have built a data collaboration and a partnership between TikTok, LiveRamp, and Tesco Media and Insight platform to enable the measurement for CPGs. And on the last 2 years, we have run like 81 reports for TikTok on the CPGs, and here the results that you are seeing are currently the average performances. And what we can see is currently TikTok are driving sales lift, so they are driving sales effectiveness, they are driving customer lift, that means that they are able to acquire brands who advertise on TikTok are able to acquire new customers, and in average the incremental return on ad spend are around 1.12 pounds. The good part with this analysis was definitely showcasing that like when CPG advertise, they are able to showcase the real incremental sales that are coming from these ads. And if we step back, when we're mentioning CFOs and CMOs, here you have the capabilities to showcasing what was the real effectiveness of your campaign. And through this meta-analysis, we were able to create a kind of books, the best practice books. The fact is, if you want to generating incremental sales, we know that in average, you need, for example, a campaign less around 45 days. That's driving 3 times bigger return on ad spend than the average campaign. We know that if you have around 6 million reach, you will be able to having 2.7 times bigger lift. If you have a frequency capping more than 1.5, that's driving. So it's really a lot of information and signals that any brands can leverage to maximize then the return on investment on their campaign on TikTok. Now let's go directly on the real case.
So the real case, we're going to talk about Coca-Cola today. Their uplifting break campaign. In order to talk about a story, we have to just take a step back and understand what is really the goal of that campaign. And their goal was purchase of Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. During the summer of sports, so Olympic 2024 and Euros, but by encouraging users to scan a QR code at the bottom of the Coke campaigns for a chance to win a ticket for Euros or the Olympics. That was their goal. And there are 3 major aspects behind me on what made this campaign particularly successful. The first one is combining different formats, mainly to make sure their messages was reaching the right audiences. The second item was about partnering with creators like Jess Watkins, a footballer and a content creator. So having branded and creator assets to make sure the content was not only relatable to the audience, but also authentic. And the third and really crucial pillar is about measurement. And mainly about that link between ad exposure to offline sales. This is where the partnership with LiveRamp was really crucial because Coca-Cola wanted to prove purchase. And as I said before, that funnel is no longer linear. So how do you link that exposure back to offline sales? So how did they do? Well, extremely well. Not only they were about to get an incremental ROAS, so return on ad spend, higher than £7, but they were also able to prove offline sales, so sales lift at 2% on the entire Coca-Cola portfolio. So going even beyond Coca-Cola Zero Sugar is about measuring, that halo effect on the full portfolio. They did not stop there. I think the real key number as well is that 1.88%, which is proving the customer growth. So really that campaign and that really successful campaign was proving that TikTok is driving offline sales, is bridging that online engagement to offline sales. So we got, that campaign was driving sales lift. That is great. That is a great story. The story doesn't stop there. I think if we want to go a step further, if you can go a step further, there are 2 major aspects that Coca-Cola had from their report on Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. 2 things that not only make us understand, okay, we have sales lift, but why do we have sales lift and where is the sales lift coming from? So 2 major things. The first one is that ad frequency matters. users exposed to 2 or more ads had a higher propensity to buy Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. That is really powerful, because that is going to inform their future planning and their future campaign. The second and really crucial point here is creative diversity. Because creative diversity is driving action. In fact, users exposed to multiple assets had a higher spend lift than users exposed to one. And that's what makes this story really powerful. Not just that campaign is driving incremental return on ad spend and new customers, but the why. The why is really what matters for this story.
And in addition, what we were able to showcasing, and you need a dedicated creative line per platform when you advertise. We're discussing of how can I address my customer in the different channels that they are leveraging, the different social platform, the different CTV, and we know that the creative aspect is key. Just because with this kind of measurement, we can showcasing that first, as we were mentioning, multiple creative assets are definitely important, but sticking to the creative lines from the platform is important too. We were able, through some of the measurement case that we were running, to showcasing that the format, the creative are great, but be able to having a variety, having a mix between native ads plus a spark, what TikTok calling spark, which is influencer marketing, are able to drive better results. And this is currently unique to TikTok, as you will find some dedicated and other creative line with other platforms. And that it's where we know that this fragmentation, the fact that the customer experiences is now fragmented, can be complicated to showcasing that you need to invest this amount in pounds in this dedicated platform in media, but in creative too, because that's definitely important. You can't have, through all the measurement that we run, the same creative across the different platforms. If you want to have an impact, you need to stick with the creative line. You need to stick to currently the unique position of each platform.
Yeah, and I think this is also what makes that story really impactful. It's about that strategy around repetition, around reach, and around creativity, and around the variety of creative. I think if we want to, we started with Once Upon a Time because we're talking about a story today. The story is about delivering business outcomes for CPG brands. And so there are 3 main things just to remember from this story. I think the first one is not just we drive sales lift or a platform is driving sales lift. It's mainly about where the lift is coming from. It's about going beyond and understand what is driving that sales lift. That second item is just partnering with partners like LiveRamp to just bridge the gap between online and offline, just to be able to prove that it works, essentially. And that third one, I think it's about that strategy. It's about what you were saying before, about the best practices, about getting to know what informs your future campaigns, really.
And in addition, on definitely the how can I measuring, we know that the online sales are always the easiest one. That's performing very, very well for e-commerce. But when you're going on CPG, where we know that more than 80% of the sales are in-store, that means that you are just covering the top of the iceberg. You are not looking at the full pictures. And so through this collaboration around like TikTok, LiveRamp, and Tesco Insight and Media Platform, we know that we were able to showcasing that here the in-store sales are definitely the key, because they can showcasing that you can have an impact. Yes, it's not a click. Yet it's just here a question of attention. We know that can, driving in-store visit and in-store sales. And for CPGs, we know that it's absolutely key, because they are able to showcasing that they are not just, let's say, stick to the CPC and what are the online sales, but here they can take the full scope of currently their transactional data. So that's why here, through this collaboration and many other in the future, they are able now to having an idea of like how to perform, taking the full scope and showcasing that the return on ad spend are not just only online, but it's online plus in-store sales.
Yeah, I think it's just about going beyond the surface and understanding what is driving that lift. And here we saw that strategy that Coca-Cola thought about ahead of the campaign was really successful. They now have elements to go back and inform their future campaign. And that's really important for them. It's about continuing and knowing what to do next.
So was it a fairy tale? The question now is more to say that there is a real story. There is still blocker with some fragmentation, but with this idea of collaboration, we are unlocking step after step, the capacity for brands like Coca-Cola to be able to measuring the full scope of their sales.
Yeah, thank you for talking about the fairy tale. It was definitely real.
And of course, if you have any question, you can come to currently the Mad Marquis at Padoga 4 if you want to discuss more around these use cases. Thanks.
Thank you.